Today, we are jumping into a part of the Bible that can feel pretty strange to us. Leviticus 15 is filled with detailed rules about bodily fluids, washing, and what it means to be pure. Let's decode how an ancient culture thought about the human body and sacred space. To make any sense of these rules, we have to wrap our heads around a central concept: being ceremonially clean. This had absolutely nothing to do with being dirty or being sinful. It was a temporary ritual state. Think of it less like being grimy and more like having a temporary do not enter sign for a holy area. It was just a normal part of life, not some kind of moral punishment. Here is why it is so important to see the difference. Being ritually unclean was temporary, and get this, it was contagious. It could be passed on through physical touch, kind of like spiritual static cling. Sin, on the other hand, was a moral problem. You couldn't catch sin by touching someone's chair. The solutions were different because the problems were in two totally different categories. The whole thing had a clear logic and a very predictable chain of events. An unclean person touches something, that thing becomes unclean. Someone else touches that thing, and boom, they become unclean too. It is a very physical, tangible way of thinking about a ritual state. This wasn't some abstract theological idea. It had real practical consequences for how you lived your day-to-day life. So how does it play out in real life? The text sets up two scenarios for men. The first is an unusual, long-lasting condition. This came with extensive rules. His uncleanliness spread to pretty much everything he touched: his bed, a chair, his pottery. The second scenario was a common, everyday biological event. The path back to being pure was way more straightforward. You just wash up and wait until sundown. It is a proportional system. The response always fits the situation. The chapter then pivots to women, laying out a parallel set of rules that work on the exact same logic. Just like with the men, there are two conditions. First, a normal monthly cycle, which carried a set, fixed state of uncleanliness for 7 days. Second, an unusual, prolonged flow outside of that regular time. The difference came down to timing. The abnormal flow lasted for as long as the condition itself did. And check this out. This rule is a perfect example of direct transmission. If a man comes into specific contact with a woman during her normal cycle, he doesn't just become unclean for a day. He actually takes on the exact same 7-day duration of impurity that the woman has. You can see how incredibly consistent the rules and timelines are. If this whole unclean thing was temporary, what exactly did you have to do to get back to being clean? For the more serious conditions, the process wasn't instant. First, the condition had to stop. Then you had to wait a full week. You washed yourself and your clothes. And the final step on the 8th day was to go to the tabernacle and have the priest make an offering for you. That is what sealed the deal. After 30 verses of incredibly specific regulations, the text finally drops the mic and gives us the why in one single sentence. These laws weren't random, and they weren't about physical hygiene. They existed to protect the holiness of the tabernacle. The whole system was about managing the strict boundary between the ordinary, everyday world and the intense holiness of the divine presence. Leviticus 15 focuses on normal bodily functions as powerful forces that affect a person's readiness to approach God. We might not have a physical tabernacle today, but every culture has ways of drawing lines between the sacred and the ordinary. This leaves us with two questions to chew on today. Where do we still draw lines between what is appropriate for certain spaces and what isn't? And what are the strict boundaries you enforce to protect the sacred core of your own life and work? Take a moment, breath, and let them sink in.